A very pleasant good afternoon to all of our viewers. We are delighted to have you on Let's Talk this afternoon. It's the day after Christmas, and we want to wish you season's greetings. We trust that you reflected on the birth of Jesus Christ and that you are doing well. So I want to take the opportunity to wish you God's blessings and a Happy New Year when it comes. This afternoon, we have a very interesting discussion. We are talking about a little wine for the stomach's sake. Is it okay for the Christian to engage in a little alcohol drinking now and then, especially at Christmas time? You know, wine is a popular commodity in Christmas dinners, etc. We want to look at that this afternoon, and we have some special guests, two medical doctors with us. Right after we pray, I will introduce them both. Let us bow our heads. Almighty Father and our God, we pray that you will be with us as we go into this afternoon's Let's Talk session. We pray for your wisdom and your guidance. We ask that you will be with all of our viewers. We are thankful and grateful for the gift of Jesus Christ, who came to earth some near 2,000 years ago, with the purpose of growing up and being the sacrifice for humankind. Grant us your peace and your blessings as we discuss today in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, to our viewers, we are, as I indicated earlier, delighted to be on Let's Talk this afternoon. We have two special guests. First, we have Dr. Jerry Alfonso Simon. He has been on Let's Talk several months ago. Dr. Simon is an addiction medicine specialist and general physician. He's the former medical director and wellness director of Crossroads Antigua, and also worked at the Clearview Psychiatric Hospital and Halberton Hospital. Presently, he's the medical director of NSA, Medical, Surgical, and Rehabilitation Center, and the clinic physician at the American University of Antigua Health Center. Delighted to have Dr. Simon with us. Let me quickly introduce our other guests before I ask them to both just make some brief remarks. We have Dr. Cameron Knowles. He is a medical doctor who has worked at the Clearview Psychiatric Hospital for the last 5 years. He partners with churches and schools and other organizations to aid in bringing awareness to mental health issues and supports efforts to destigmatize those affected by mental illness. Before working at the mental health hospital there, he successfully completed an internship program at Mount St. John Medical Center, where he worked as a general practitioner. We are delighted to have both Doctors Knowles and Simon with us on Let's Talk this afternoon. Gentlemen, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Now, our topic for this afternoon is one, I am choosing to call it a little wine for the stomach's sake. We want to look at the matter of alcohol consumption and whether or not it is okay for Christians and particularly Seventh Adventists to engage a little, to indulge a little bit sometimes. You know, recently I did an informal survey among some of our members. I asked the question, do you use alcohol? And I was a little surprised at the responses I received. Some persons said occasionally, you know, at Christmas time, those kinds of things. Today we want to discuss this matter of a little wine for the stomach's sake. Let me begin by, Dr. Simon, you are an addiction specialist. I believe you therefore deal in those kinds of behaviors that people get addicted to. You know, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has a very strong stance against alcohol consumption. In fact, I noted that in the baptismal vows, it is stated as a harmful substance that should not be used. At the same time, alcohol is legal and can be purchased by any adult. What's so bad about alcohol? Let me first ask Dr. Simon.
Well, looking at it from a purely medical, scientific point of view, there are several issues with alcohol. First and foremost, it can impair the mind, impair judgment, and that is always a serious issue when we think of the fact that when a person is impaired mentally, that they can do certain things which they would not want to be doing. For example, one time I had a patient at a Crossroads Center, and she said the reason why she decided to come to the center, she woke up in a hotel room, knew that she had sex with someone, but didn't know quite who it was or how she even got there. And that for her was a wake-up call. And she knew the reason why she ended up in that position is because she was drunk. In fact, quite often when we talk about date rape and we talk about some of the substance that they use, we only find maybe less than 3% of the cases that they use some of these special drugs like what we call GHB and these drugs that they slip into people's drink. What we found in most cases, it was actually the alcohol itself in about 97% of the cases in a study from the UK. It was just alcohol itself. These women drink alcohol and were drunk and were being raped, what we call date rape, because of the fact they were impaired. So that's one of the biggest things with alcohol. Other problems can be the physical issues, especially damage to the liver. We know the liver has a lot of metabolic functions in the body in terms of digestion, in terms of detoxification, many other bile production. So alcohol, one of the things that it does is to impair the liver, which is a very important organ. Without your liver functioning optimally or to some great extent, you will die. Also, it can cause damage to the kidney, to the heart, to the lungs, to just about every organ. It increases cancer. It can cause cancer, contribute to cancer in the brain. So alcohol is definitely a substance that have many negative effects. Now I'm speaking in these cases of maybe not necessarily extreme position, but of course a position where a person uses alcohol to the extent that it will cause these damage. But I have to be honest to say as well too that there are a lot of people who use alcohol in a moderate way. For example, in the Mediterranean countries, in the Mediterranean basin, places like Icaria in Greece and Sardinia in Italy, there are people who drink alcohol on almost a daily basis, usually a glass of red wine, some maybe a glass and a half, maybe two. And these people live to long, healthy ages, and it is believed that some of the phytosterols in the alcohol, in the grape juice, contribute to them living long. But suffice it to say, we know we can get these particular chemicals or the benefits of these chemicals without necessarily drinking something that's fermented, without necessarily drinking an alcoholic drink. So just want to add that caveat.
We will talk about that in a little bit. That was very interesting. I was planning to go there. But Dr. Knowles, you work at the psychiatric hospital currently. Do we have a lot of cases resulting from alcoholic usage?
We have a few, but not a lot clearly, because we don't necessarily rehabilitate up there, right? But we do have a few cases where we have psychiatric illnesses due to alcohol consumption. But what we do there is treat, and then we will send them to a rehabilitation such as Crossroads or the part-time one that they have. And there are also places in Cupcross and around the island that do addiction therapy. So we will send them there also for treatment. But we don't have a lot up where we work now.
Now we're talking about a substance that is potentially addictive. At the same time, it is legal. So I can, if I desire, I can go to a store, a supermarket, or someplace and purchase a bottle of alcohol and consume it. Either of you can tell me, how do we move from just a casual drinker to addiction?
But before we go there, it's important to understand that after we drink alcohol and it goes into our blood, it can diffuse to all the cells in the body. Every cell in the body wants alcohol is absorbed by the stomach and the small intestines, it can be diffused to every cell within the body within minutes. All right, so that's important. So whether we drink a small amount or we eat it in the cake, or we have substances such as beer, wine, or vodka, a small amount of alcohol, once it's absorbed into the body, it can be diffused to every cell that we have. That is why, as Dr. Simon said, right, it affects all our organs within the body. So it's important to note that, because a lot of Adventists will say, well, I only drink a little bit, I only eat it in the fruit cake when Christmas time come. We know how it is, but it's important to note that every cell within our body can be affected once we consume alcohol. So just a note to slide in there.
No, okay, thank you for that note. No, I did ask a question before, but let me butt in here. When the alcohol gets diffused into these cells, what kind of impact does it have on the cells?
All right, but
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Knowles.
Okay, shall I make it?
All right, let me go into the brain then, right? So one of the most important organs is our brain, right? Our brain controls a lot of what we think, what we do, all our actions. Our brain controls it, right? So when alcohol passes through what we call the blood-brain barrier, it goes and we have what we call neurotransmitters. So between each cells, right, we have two neurons, and there's a neurotransmitter that channels the signal between each cell. So what alcohol does, it goes and it blocks that, right? So in the brain, we have what's called stimulators and inhibitors. So alcohol is an inhibitor. That's understood. That is why when we get drunk, we lose our motor function. That is why we get dizzy, because it's an inhibitor. So that's part of what it does in the brain. Even in small amounts, it also inhibits. A lot of us might not see the full effect of it, but it does cause some form of inhibition with the signals in our brain. It's not all of our nerve cells need that neurotransmitter in between in order for it to pass signals from one cell to the other. Again, what alcohol does is that it inhibits the passing of these signals, right? Also, it affects the dopamine secretion, right? And that is where the addiction part comes in, because dopamine is the feel good. It affects our mood. So it's the feel good hormone within our brain, right? And this is why alcohol, even in small amounts, can be effective, can be addictive, right? Something of note too, when we drink, even in small amounts, the first thing we feel is the happy feeling or euphoria. And that is the way, for me at least, it becomes dangerous, because if I drink something or take any form of substance, and that substance causes me to feel good, it releases dopamine in my brain, then the chances are I will go back again to take it, and go back again to take it, and go back again until I'm no longer socially drinking. It becomes now moderate, and from moderate it transfers to heavy. That is why we need to also be very careful. Yes.
But Pastor Greene, if I could add here, as to the question that you posed about the addiction, how it goes from a legal substance to being addictive. Mm-hmm. One of the things I want to emphasize here, the fact that a substance is legal, just like cigarettes, for example, doesn't mean they cannot be dangerous. And that's the thing that we have to get, especially when we speak to our young people. Secondly, the addictive process in alcohol is similar to the addictive process of many other chemicals. Now, let's say a person, as a young person, was, let's say, raped or suffered some psychological trauma. For example, people who are soldiers, sometimes they do suffer psychological trauma that can lead to what we call post-stress disorder. Right. So what can happen is that to numb the pain, sometimes the physical pain they feel also, to numb that pain, the psychological pain and the physical pain, they could resort to drinking. Or someone could start drinking in the first place because one of the things alcohol does is to reduce that level of inhibition that we have, that impulse control that we have, it reduces that. So whereas a person might be shy, let's say you go to a party and you're shy to talk to a girl and that you like. So one of your friends might say, oh, take a drink. And when you take that drink, you feel comfortable. Alcohol does do that, or does that. So you take that first drink, it makes you feel good. Now to get that same effect, you take another drink, maybe let's say 6-7 months after, but you find that you need to take a little bit more to get that same effect.
Right.
Over time, you develop what we call tolerance. As a result of that tolerance, it means you need to take more and more of that chemical substance in order for you to feel that effect you got when you have it the first time, that feel-good effect. So over time, you find you're drinking more and more of that alcohol, maybe 1 drink, 2 drink, 5 drink, 10 drink, 15 drinks. You have to drink so much for you to get that initial effect that you got. As a result of that drinking, you reach what we call a physiological tolerance, where you don't even get to that physiological tolerance, you reach a physiological tolerance where the amount that you drink is causing damage to the physical organs of your body. That is the cells of your brain, the cells of your liver, the cells of your kidney. However, you're still not getting that feel-good effect. And as a result, many patients can take alcohol and other substances where they will die physically, or they will, have physical damage, either damage to the brain cells, damage to the liver, kidney. They will have seizures. In some cases, they will even just die without them getting that effect they're seeking, without them getting that psychological effect now that they're seeking when they took it first. And that's one of the reasons why alcohol becomes so dangerous. And when I speak of addiction, I always remember the text when Solomon says, wine is a mocker, strong drink are raging, those who are deceived thereby is not wise. And the deception comes because alcohol initially makes you feel good. It releases those inhibitions that you might have. And as a result of that release of those inhibitions that you might have, you start to feel good, you feel comfortable. And this is where the deception lies. You're there drinking more and more and more to get that singular effect that you had the first time you drink it. And you never, ever again, most times, reach that first time effect. And as a result, you keep using more until it destroys you eventually.
Now let me ask. I recall, I know that this broadcast is going all around the world, but I recall as a very young boy, I went to my sister's wedding, and I saw everybody else drinking, these things in cans. I believe it was Budweiser or something like that. I wasn't a Christian then, but I picked up one, I pulled it, and I started drinking. And by the time I took the second sip, I realized that my head was spinning. Maybe I have very low tolerance. So I tell myself I was not created to drink alcohol, and that was the very last time I ever consumed any. Are some people, and I've heard people say that as soon as they smell it, they get knocked out. So are some people able to tolerate more than other people?
Some people are able to tolerate more. For example, women have a less ability to metabolize alcohol than men does. So as a result, or men do. So as a result, when, for example, a woman drinks alcohol, she will have a stronger effect to it in how it impairs her body, or even mentally as well. But there are some people who over years, because they've drink, and most people when they drink it for the first time, will have that effect that you would have, that effect that their head is spinning, but they learn to just, roll with the punches, so to speak. And over time, they will continue drinking. And as a result, they will develop tolerance to alcohol drinking. However, there are some people, for example, who have certain enzymes in their bodies. We know, for example, that people of the East Indian race, they tend not to be able to metabolize alcohol as well as people, let's say, Caucasians. And as a result, a small amount of alcohol will cause them severe impairment compared to, let's say, Caucasians who will drink a lot of alcohol, become addicted, but will not necessarily have the impairment, the mental impairment over the short term as, let's say, a person of East Indian descent. So these are just some of the nuances that we find in alcohol, that there are different tolerance levels that people have. Some people develop the tolerance level because they continue using alcohol. Some people just naturally do not have that tolerance level. But regardless of your tolerance level, at some point in time, you're going to find if you drink alcohol for a long period, that is going to cause some sort of impairment with your organs, again, with the body organs. And as a result of that impairment, you could find, for example, that in the long term, there's some people that will have what we call Korsakoff syndrome or Wernicke syndrome, where a particular area in the brain becomes damaged. And as a result, whether or not they drink, they're going to permanently have a stagger. They're going to permanently lose their memory. It will lead to things like dementia, things similar to Alzheimer's disease, because of the fact that the alcohol have damaged them to that extent.
That's very interesting stuff there. Dr. Cameron,
to add also, if you drink it on an empty stomach, the chance of you having effects are greater, and also have to do with your body weight and if you're dehydrated or not. The more dehydrated you are when you drink alcohol, the chances of your blood alcohol levels increasing faster, right? And yeah, again, on an empty stomach, it absorbs faster into the body. So those are also two stuff to add on to what.
So Dr. Knowles, let me ask you. You mentioned there that if an individual drinks the alcohol on an empty stomach, it can create a very negative effect.
Correct.
Let's say a more severe effect.
Yeah.
I know that there are so many persons out there who, as a child growing up, I used to hear folks say, the first thing in the morning they're drinking rum. We used to use that term back then. Is it that these individuals have developed the kind of tolerance that Dr. Simon mentioned earlier?
Yes. And also to get that effect that they want, they have to drink it on an empty stomach. Also.
Oh, I'm sensing what you're talking about now.
Yes.
So they're craving for that feel-good effect.
Yes.
And therefore they're doing experimenting, so to speak. But I'm assuming at the same time it is destroying their bodies.
Correct.
But let me ask you another question, Dr. Knowles, because I think generally speaking, the average person would say, yes, alcohol, drinking a lot of alcohol is not a good thing, because we can see the evidences of what happens when people get drunk and lose their sensibilities. But it's Christmas time. And, a little wine. What do you say? Now this, Dr. Knowles, I'm asking you this question. I'm going to ask Dr. Simon something else a little while from now. But so the person says a little wine, if we buy some red wine and we drink it, what's so bad about that? Just occasional.
We, as we mentioned earlier on, right? That little wine can cause what we call the happy effect, or the dopamine secretion in the brain. So today I drink that little wine and I feel good. It's Christmas, so I drink a glass of wine, and that glass of wine made me feel a certain way. So then I go and drink another one this afternoon again, but I like it, and I have to finish the bottle. Nobody buys a bottle of wine, and have it there to spoil. Correct? So they may say,
I understand that wine can last for a very long time.
It can last for a very long time, correct. But because I feel good this morning when I drank it, I'm going to drink some for lunch, and I'm also going to drink some for dinner. Right? And that will eventually become a habit. And as we know, habits can become dangerous after time. Right? But the issue I ask is why wine? What's the benefit of drinking the wine that I cannot get from grape juice or from eating grapes? Right? Because when you speak to someone about drinking wine, they will tell you all the sciences involved in a glass of wine, that all the research that has been done over the years. But the effect that we get from the chemical within the wine is not actually from the alcohol, right? But it's from the grape skin and the grape juice that is there. Understood? So we can get that from eating a lot of grapes or grape juice. The same benefit, heart benefits, and the benefits for the kidney that the research has shown. It's actually from the grape skin and the grape juice, and not the alcohol present.
So when I hear on breaking news on BBC, research has shown that a little red wine can add length to your life, etc. It really is about the grape, you're saying?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Especially in the grape skin, right? Especially the grape skin has a high level of good chemicals in it, right? That help the heart. It helps cancer. It helps all of that, right? Not actually the alcohol, but because wine is made from the grape, right? It takes along the benefit that the grapes offers.
Now, Dr. Simon, I suppose the difference between alcoholic, let's say grape juice, you can have non-alcoholic and alcoholic, is the matter of fermentation, right?
Right.
But I suppose I can make some ginger beer in my kitchen and leave it to ferment. Would I kind of get the same effect? Sorrel as well.
Yeah.
I was asking if I could get the same effect from leaving the ginger beer or the sorrel, or that juice that I make at home. If I leave it out and deliberately allows it to ferment, will I get the same effect?
Well, it's the wine making process, so to speak, and yes, it can happen. So if you and especially I know there's a type of grapes you have in Antigua, kind of black grape. There's a few trees around our church in Liberta. One is actually in the church.
There was one in the churchyard, and
that they cut down, unfortunately.
Overnight.
It's really one of my my kind of favorite kind of fruit, and my mom had an experience with that. Something I can't repeat here. But yes, you by the process of fermentation, yes, you can at home make your own wine, so to speak. But Dr. Knowles made a very important point. I want people to get it. When we talk about the effect of wine, again, they will study the alcoholic drink wine because of how these studies are, who are sponsoring these studies and who are wanting to find whatever reading into these studies. For example, if I want to tell you there's a good effect in cigarette, and I'm the one that's going to sell cigarettes, I will find a good effect for it, okay? Even though you might have a million negative effects. So we must realize that the phytophenols that you find in the grape juice, that's what caused the good effect of wine, so to speak, not the alcohol. Because if you drink vodka, which is not from grapes, but it's a strong alcoholic drink, if you drink some of these corn distilled heavy liquor, your gin and vodka and these kind of things, you would not get the similar good effect that you get from drinking wine. So we must emphasize here that, yes, you at home, when you have your grape juice and other forms of juice, you can leave it to ferment and it will be alcoholic. And you'll have the same effect, so to speak, in terms of the negative effects as if you buy the alcohol at whichever place that sells alcohol. So just be mindful of that.
Well, we have a question here from one of our viewers. Well, we actually have several questions. I didn't realize that so many questions came in. So, Dr. Knowles, I think we're making the point that even a little alcohol can be, dangerous. But should we avoid? This is what the person is asking. Should we avoid alcoholic-based medicines? Now, both of you are physicians. That's a good question, because I noticed that there are some substances that we buy, cough syrups and those kinds of things, that do have a very high concentration of alcohol. So should we avoid alcoholic-based medications?
We should. Up at Clearview, where I work, we do not recommend any form of alcohol in any substance at all. Whether it's medicine, doesn't matter what it is, any form of alcohol in any substance. don't recommend it. Alcohol is used in a lot of like Rescafar, 7Cs. They use it as a preservative for the vitamins that's there, but we don't recommend any form of alcohol in anything at all.
Well, that answer surprised me. Honestly, I didn't expect that. So that's interesting. I wasn't aware that there was in your field that there was some deliberate attempt to avoid alcoholic-based medications. Interesting.
Yeah, we try because, for example, if you have one of the predisposing factors that could make you an alcoholic, and some of the predisposing factors, for example, if you have family members, especially mother, father, who are alcoholics,
Yes.
you were yourself an alcoholic. Let's say you're a recovering alcoholic, and or you're around people who drink a lot, which means that somehow you'll take alcohol as an ordinary substance. That is a predisposing factor as well. What can happen if you smell alcohol, as you quite mentioned Pastor Greene earlier, that can trigger you to want to drink more and can rekindle that addiction. I give you an example. There's some alcoholics that when you sing a particular song, let's say they're recovering alcoholics, when you sing a particular song, it can trigger them to drink. I remember one time I was doing a lecture and I had a pen in my hand and I held the pen between my fingers in a similar way that a person would use a cigarette, would hold a cigarette. And after the lecture, because the audience were patients at Crossroads, one man said, "Dr. Simon, you gave me a trigger there," because it was the action that he used when he was smoking cigarettes. So it was a trigger for his cigarette smoking. So even the small touch of alcohol that you might find in these medicines, especially if you're predisposed to alcoholic addiction, that should be a no-no.
So when I go to the doctor, Dr. Knowles, I come to you as a patient. I have a particular condition, and you prescribe medication.
Mm-hmm.
I am not careful to check to see if the medication is alcoholic based or not. Are you saying that I should ask you as a doctor, what does this contain? How is it going to affect me?
You should ask, but we do when we prescribe any medication. Most medication that you see come with alcohol are vitamin based. Well, a lot of them are actually multivitamins. You buy them in the bottle and you pour them and you drink them, right? A lot of cough syrups also come with alcohol also, right? So whenever whenever we prescribe or we tell you to go and take this, I usually recommend read the label and make sure it says non-alcoholic before you purchase it.
Is that therefore mainly the liquid forms?
The liquid forms usually.
Yeah, liquid forms.
Okay, so when you as a child growing up, your parents would go and buy tonic.
Perolans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
They contain alcohol. If you don't say specifically non-alcoholic, they contain alcohol.
So I could use this as a leverage for getting my alcohol if they don't want to sell me. Interesting. But now let's take another question from a viewer here because the questions are piling up. So let's see what this one says. When cake is made with fruit soaked in wine, is the effect of the wine the same as in its natural state? So again, we know that there is at Christmas time the black cake, and let me add this to the question because when I did chemistry at advanced level, they tell me that the alcohol evaporates when heated.
Yeah.
So if I soak the fruit in the alcohol and I bake the cake, will I get the same effect? Dr. Simon,
the effect would be somewhat less because quite rightly, when the cake is being baked, there's some evaporation of the alcohol. It kind of sends that flavor around the cake, so to speak. But the effect, pound per pound or millimeter per millimeter, would be less than you drink the raw wine. But like I mentioned earlier, if you have a person who is predisposed to be an alcoholic, and you have to remember some of our brethren who are in the church were not necessarily born in the church. Some of them would have been drinkers. Some of them would have been recovering alcoholics as well. And so you would not want to be giving them black cake, because even the black cake itself, just seeing a black cake, even if it doesn't have alcohol in it, if you can make a black cake without alcohol, even if it doesn't have alcohol in it, it can trigger some people. So we have to be careful, in terms of baking the black cake with or what some people call rum cake or the fruit cake with the alcohol in it. We have to be careful with it, because yes, it has a less effect. I wouldn't tell you anyone that has the same effect like if you drink the raw wine, but it can have a triggering effect, and that triggering effect now can maybe put somebody back into alcoholic relapse. So we have to be very careful.
Yeah.
Now I am Dr.
Yeah.
Knowles, you're adding.
Here's my take on it, right? When Caribbeans cook or bake the rum cake, we will soak the fruits in the alcohol for a week, 2 weeks, however long, right? This alcohol content is actually higher than beer and wine. Sometimes it's 30%, 40% alcohol content within the rum, right? When it's baked, after they take it out, they actually soak the cake with rum also, and then put it back in for a little while. Now, yes, alcohol does evaporate faster than water at 78 degrees Celsius, but the fruit cake is never bone dry. I don't know how many of you have eaten fruit or seen it before. It is never bone dry. So there's always some form of alcohol within it. Correct? So yes, eating it and eating a lot of it can actually give you side effects, can actually make you drunk. Remember there's a part in it also that after it's baked, a lot of people actually take it out, soak it in alcohol again, and then put it back in for like 5 minutes. So it is still soaked and has alcohol within it. So you can get drunk from it. But again, it is not, as I said, it is not the same as drinking the pure rum, because a lot of it has been evaporated out.
Now, I was about to say something before you commented there. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but anyway, I'll say it. I am not a lover of cake, but if I am having cake, I would prefer it to be black cake. However, let me add the however, because I've known of individuals who make the fruit cake, but they don't use the alcohol, and some persons use grape juice. Now, I don't know if the process creates fermentation, but there's some folks who use grape juice rather than the alcohol. Because I also know of individuals who got drunk from eating the cake, the black cake soaked in the alcohol. So that's interesting.
The natural grape juice would not necessarily ferment unless you put it through a fermentation process. Okay. So there's some people that would do the fruit cake with their fruits, with their cherries and with the other fruits, without it having that fermentation alcoholic effect. So that
because I was planning to have a piece after this program. So
when you said you love black cake, it scared me for a moment, because I wonder if we had to read you out of the church.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. Let's take another question from our viewers here. Let's hear this one. Please explain 1 Timothy 5:23. It is most times used out of context, and I do agree. So I want to read the passage of scripture. It is 1 Timothy that the person is asking us to explain. 1 Timothy 5 and verse 23. It says, verse 23, drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake and thine often infirmities. So we have a situation here where Paul was writing to Timothy, and Timothy obviously had some medical issues, and Paul was telling him, use no longer water, but a little wine. Now of course, the word wine in the Bible is sometimes used of fermented drink and sometimes of unfermented drink. So let's hear the medical persons on this one. Who's going to go first now? Dr. Knowles?
With the wine for the stomach's sake?
Yes. But after all, that's what we're talking about this afternoon.
Correct. Again, how do I phrase it now? Alcohol necessarily is not good for the stomach. Understood? But the chemicals within Grape have shown very good effects for the stomach and the intestines.
So could Paul therefore be saying to the individual here, because we do know that wine as used in the context here is really referring to grape juice, not necessarily, you know, and for the benefit of our listeners, there is sometimes you read in the Bible, it talks about strong drink, or when in Proverbs, for example, it says, look not at the wine when it turneth. So when it turns, it's a fermentation process. So if I may, from a theological perspective, say that the little wine here is not referring to fermented drink, it's referring to the grape juice that can have the healing virtues.
And another thing to add with that, Pastor Greene, and we have to make sure we take something in context. Now, we're not sure exactly what problem that Timothy had of his stomach, or what medical issue he had. And we have to remember that in times past, such as now, as we mentioned, there's certain medication that has alcohol in it. Now, it could have been something that Paul, would have mentioned to Timothy, that it was commonly used at that point in time to treat whatever Timothy had. I'll give an example. And this is a story that I always read with fascination. I'm trying to be quick. When Jesus was on the cross, we know he was offered the vinegar and on a sponge.
Yes.
We know he had initially refused while he was still alive, but towards the end, when he already gave up, so to speak, he had a sip of whatever that was, and then gave up the ghost and died. Now I learned, and this is something that I kind of read in the Middle Eastern culture, is that they use that substance to numb pain. But how it numbs the pain is that it numbs your mind, it numbs your brain. And I heard a number of theologians and a number of scientific people said that in the moment when Jesus took it, if he took it the first time when it was offered, it is likely that it would have numbed his brain to the extent that he could have been out of his senses and decide, hey, I'm not going to continue with this, this giving my life for a fallen race, and that would be the end of our plan of salvation. Now, I thought it was a cruel act that these people were giving Jesus this thing to drink, not knowing that it was actually a painkiller, a number of pain. So I said all that to say this. Paul might have asked Timothy to drink some wine for his stomach's sake, because whatever that wine is and whatever the substance is would have helped his ailment. But as we know better now, there are medication for all sorts of stomach issues that don't have alcohol. So we should not get too carried away with wine for stomach's sake to think that if we have a digestive problem that Paul says we should drink wine. We have to be very careful with that kind of line of reasoning, because it can be a dangerous road to go down. And remember again, anything that impairs your brain, even though it might have a positive effect on one part of your body. Let me give an example again. Opioid medication from the poppy plant. For example, your morphine, and they have chemicalized forms now. Your morphine, your heroin, oxycodone, oxycontin, codeine. These are all painkillers, but they also have a brain effect. So any substance that has a brain effect or a mind altering effect, anything that can change your thinking, your way of thinking, can be very dangerous. So even when you take medication, painkillers, you have to find out from your doctor, can these change my thinking? Can these change my mood? Can these change my thoughts? Because then you can do something on the influence of these chemicals that can be dangerous for you in the long term.
That's very insightful and a bit scary. Dr. Knowles?
The consumption of alcohol increases your risk of cancer within the digestive system. Your mouth, your throat, your stomach, your colon, your intestines, the consumption of alcohol increases your risk for getting any form of cancer within the digestive system.
So it sounds to me, Dr. Knowles, like it's really a stupid thing to want to drink something that is going to be so deleterious to the body.
Mm.
Now, well, I'm interested in this concept of, you know, the thing interfering with the mind. You know, when Dr. Simon spoke just now, the idea is if this is going to interfere with my reasoning abilities, I can see how people could use that to my advantage and cause me to make decisions that are not in the best interest. But let's take another question here. I'm trying to get as many questions in as possible. This person says, I have a problem with sweet foods. Often I feel sleepy, probably drunk after consuming sweet foods. Does this equate with drinking alcohol?
That's a very good question. And the reason why it's an interesting question, when I worked at Crossroads, there was a patient who told me that his addiction started when he would come home from work, you know, feeling stressed out and tired. He would take a half cup of or half glass of sugar and pour water on it and just drink it. And after several months, he started to use cocaine and he got addicted to cocaine. Now we have to remember, sugar is one of the most addictive substances there is.
Correct.
In quite a number of its forms. For example, a lot of these high fructose cough syrup, high fructose drinks, fruit drinks, they are or soft drinks. They're actually made for us to be addicted to them because the sugar is addictive. Sugar takes a lot of energy as well, funny enough, for it to be digested. Refined sugar, that is. Refined sugar is one of the most empty foods you can find. It's carbohydrate, yes, which should be energy food, but it's not really energy food because what has to happen is that your body has to send a lot of blood from the brain, from the different organs into the stomach and intestines so that that sugar can be digested.
Right.
As a result, it'll make you tired, it'll make you sick, it will decrease your immune system. So let's say you use a lot of sugar in this COVID time, you would be at higher risk for getting flu and cold and other things because of the amount of sugar you consume. So again, we have to be careful because one of the things that Ellen G. White speaks about a lot is the whole issue of self-control. And believe it or not, the act of using excessive amount of sugar actually has a mind-changing effect as well too, because it causes you to be addicted. And whenever you become addicted to a substance, there are actually physical changes that occur on your brain. For example, if you're addicted to even gambling, there are actually certain physical changes, biochemical changes that eventually become physical changes that occur on your brain. So as a result, we have to be careful with anything that alters our brain.
You know, I made a decision a few years ago. I was making some sorrel drink, and when I realized how much sugar it was taking, I decided then that I'm parting company with sorrel because in order for it to taste. But here's a question, Dr. Knowles. You did say when Dr. Simon made the point that you know, sugar is extremely addictive. I heard a documentary the other day, and they were saying that some of the recipes that call for sugar the sugar serves no other purpose than to create that effect on you to want to use this thing more. But people also say, and here's my question, Dr. Knowles, people also say that the combination of ice cream and cake can produce alcohol. I don't know whether this is true or false. Can you say a word on that?
It has to do with the milk. Milk.
The milk.
And sugar.
Oh.
Yeah, milk and sugar.
Yes.
Because it stays so long within the stomach, it ferments. That is why I don't recommend cornflakes for anybody in the morning, especially the children, because milk and sugar ferment in the stomach to form alcohol. So you're sending your children to school drunk, basically.
Now, you
Right?
just said something that I have not heard before.
Yes.
So say that again, please. Cornflakes with the sugar.
Yeah, milk, anything with milk and sugar, because it stays so long to digest within the stomach, it ferments and it forms alcohol within the stomach.
Interesting.
Yes, so
interesting.
Cornflakes in the morning, whatever it is, as long as we add a lot of sugar to it, and it stays long within the stomach to digest, it forms alcohol. So I don't recommend cornflakes. Whenever anybody speaks to me, I don't recommend cornflakes in the morning, just for that reason alone. That is why at 9 o'clock, some of our students some are logy and others are very excited, depending on how the body functions.
Wow.
Right? Yes. So
that's remarkable. Now I don't use soy. I don't use dairy milk and that kind of stuff. So maybe I get a buy there. I don't like sugar anyway. But another question: how does alcohol affect the unborn child? I know lots of Hispanic continue drinking even when they're pregnant, says the listener, the viewer. Go ahead, Dr. Simon.
Alcohol drinking causes serious malformations in children. They're actually what we call fetal alcohol syndrome, where even the features of the child can change. You see the head is bigger than it should be, or in some case smaller, the microcephaly, or the shape of the head, the backbone development, the spinal cord development. So what you find that these children now, when they're born with what we call malformations. Some of these malformations can be physical, but quite often the malformations are intellectual and mental. So you find the child is mentally retarded because of the use of alcohol by the mom. And another thing as well too, even the non-chemical effect of alcohol drinking is just as important. When I say the non-chemical effect, the mood that a woman is in when she's pregnant often can have long-term effect on the unborn child. And what you find is that the indulgences that you have as a mom, as a mother, when you're pregnant, they can be passed on to the child. And I'm not sure exactly of all the scientific explanation for that, but we do know that, lots of children are born predisposed to either violence because of violent behavior by their parents and other things like that. So it's very important to recognize there's a chemical effect, a real chemical effect that can lead to serious mental and physical damage in the development of your child. But there's also a psychological effect that can also impair your child in the long term.
Okay, wow.
It's important to remember that once alcohol is in your blood, for a pregnant woman, it goes anywhere. So if the woman drinks it, yes, it is transferred to the unborn child because there's a connection between the mother and the unborn child. So yes, alcohol will go to the unborn child and it will inhibit the function of the brain or the forming of that young unborn child's brain and other organs within the body. So yes.
Now, gentlemen, our time is almost up and there are so many questions here. I think we need a part 2. I hope sometime, not next week, we have something else lined up for next week, but we do want to address some of these. So I'm going to dialogue with you, but because this is a burning question for me. Let me leave that until part 2. Let's ask another question here. I'll leave that in the part 2. But somebody's asking, what is your position on the use of Angostura bitters? Dr. Knowles, you mentioned something earlier about the liquid forms of thing, and I think many of us know this bitters stuff. Does
the bitters have alcohol in it? I am not sure if it does.
You're asking me? I don't know.
Yes, it does. Okay. The Angostura bitters is this little flavoring that in the Caribbean, many of us, and I say many of us, many Caribbean people use it to add it to drinks to give a certain flavor to your drink.
Okay.
They use it in cake. They use it in
It does. 44% alcohol.
And it does have a lot of alcohol. And if we just like we've been saying for the whole afternoon, I would not advocate using something like that because it is alcoholic of nature. And it does have a serious amount of alcohol in it as well too. I know, for example, in my home as a small boy growing up, we had Angostura bitters in the house. My mom used to make drinks with it. I have made drinks with it as well too. But like I said, when you know ignorance, God wins us, okay? Now we know, and there's more knowledge about the effects of alcohol and the knowledge of these things. We have to develop to the point, or grow to the point where we can say, leave these alone. It takes self-control, and if we know and look at also salvation, a lot of it is about self-control. Are we listening to what God is telling us and following His ways? And in terms of alcohol, if something's going to be dangerous for us, I think we should just leave it alone.
Dr. Knowles, I thought I heard you saying the percentage in the Angostura bitters. What?
44.7%.
What's that?
44.7% alcohol.
That is a tremendous amount.
Correct. It is.
What's the average percentage in a bottle of wine?
Well, beer has between 4 to 6%. I think wine has around 10 to 12%. And then you have stuff like some have up to 20%. And you will have like gin and whiskey and vodka that would have like 30 to 40% alcohol.
So that Angostura bitters is really dangerous.
It
is, yeah.
Wow. Okay, I think we might be able to get in.
Like a few drops.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Normally people would add like a few drops, like you add maybe 2 or 3 drops to your drink or whatever. But knowing what we know now, that it's indeed alcohol and the purpose of it, we can leave that alone. There are other ways you can flavor your drink without the use of Angostura bitters.
All right, here is another question. Let's see, this one says, I became intoxicated by scent of alcohol. I would like to know what is the cause. In this pandemic, we are encouraged to use, various, but
wash your hands.
Various, but was sick every day, I believe, because of the exposure. So this individual seemed to be saying that, if they smell the alcohol, they become intoxicated. And then there's so many alcohol-based products that they're using during the pandemic. Yes, Dr. Knowles.
It is true. The purpose of the alcohol that we're using now is to sanitize, right? So it is actually above, I think, 90% alcohol.
At least
7%. Yeah, alcohol that we use in the chemical to clean our hands and to sanitize, right? So the purpose of it, some may be absorbed, but not a lot. I think they have cases where they say alcohol can be absorbed through the skin, right? But it's small. It's a small amount, right? And the purpose we're using it for is an issue that has never happened before, right? Because every day, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, we have to sanitize our hands, right? So most of the time when we ask people to sanitize, we prefer to use soap and water over the alcohol-based substances. And soap and water actually kills a lot of germs. It's effective against the COVID-19 virus. But because of how we are now, the use of alcohol-based substances to sanitize is needed. So there's not a lot of choice that we have with that.
Pastor Greene, if I might add here as well too, that the actual drinking of an alcoholic substance is, chemically or biochemically, is one of the most inefficient way to get alcohol in your body. Let me give you an example. Sure. In California, a few years ago, the men, when they go to bars and stuff, and women, when they go out to drink, they will go in a little back room, get a syringe, take off the needle, and squirt the syringe up their anus to get their high of alcohol. And that small syringe of alcohol will actually give you a bigger high than drinking a whole, few beers or rum or whatever, okay? If you have enough alcohol that you inhale, because remember when you smell something, it's in a liquid form, to some extent in a liquid form, because the molecules are liquefied, or the gas molecules will have some liquid on it. It comes to your nose, dissolve on the cilia in your nose, and then go down into your lungs or wherever. Mm-hmm. So you can indeed get a high from actually inhaling alcohol. There used to be some preparations of alcohol where you will actually go inhale the alcohol and you get a high faster that way, or get drunk faster that way than actually drinking alcohol. Right. And as I mentioned, those who squirt it up their anus You know, some of it can absorb to your skin as well too. Your skin is the largest organ in your body, and the skin absorbs a lot of substances. It will take a lot of hand sanitizer for you to really get junk through your skin. But definitely, if it's vaporized, when it becomes vaporized, and you inhale it through your nostril, it can have an effect as well.
Well,
So
gentlemen, our time is just about up. I want to thank you so much. There's several other questions, but like I said, we will one of these days arrange a part 2 and have you back. You both raised some very amazing things. You know, the food combination, the cereal in the morning with the milk and those kinds of things. Very amazing. To our viewers, next week on Let's Talk, we are going to be talking about a very important topic. In fact, we're going to be having Dr. Knowles with us. He was our first guest on Let's Talk when we started some long months ago, but we want to look at conspiracy theories concerning COVID and those related issues. That's next week. And then the following week, we're going to be having conversations with some church leaders. We will have several of our presidents from around the Caribbean Union join us as we talk about how relevant is the church today in this climate. So that's our lineup for next couple of weeks on Let's Talk. Dr. Simon, Dr. Knowles, it was such a delight to have you with us this afternoon. You know, we could go on and on, but our time has ended. And so thank you so much. Appreciate the wealth of information that you shared. And to all those of you out there who were hoping to hear something to excuse your intake over the weekend, sorry to have disappointed you, but now that we know, God wants us to act wisely and take care of our bodies. God bless you, gentlemen. Thank you so much again. And until next time. That's all.